So let's dive in. Currently, we have so many discussions on like will people come back to the office, continue working remotely, hybrid model. Now everyone is getting vaccine in the US, and JP Morgan, Goldman stated that people should come back to the office for a better collaboration. On the other hand, we have Twitter, IBM, Autonomous embracing the hybrid model. And some days it works, some days remotely, someday remotely. So do you think hybrid model is going to be widely adopted by major companies in the US, and why?
I do think most companies will adopt the hybrid model. And by the hybrid model, we call it in the book the Goldilocks plan, not too much remote work and not too little. The reason is, we can see all the surveys. Most people don't want to spend every day at home. They feel more isolated. They don't get the benefits of collaboration. Some of them struggle to structure their day. On the other hand, people now having worked remote for a large part of the pandemic are not prepared to come back to the office 5 days a week. So I think we will see 80 to 90% of the businesses in which people will be in the office 2 to 4 days a week. And that will depend a lot on a number of factors. And I think that there's no one size fits all, but I think here are the sorts of factors that companies are going to consider. One is they're going to look at the nature of work. There are quite a few jobs which cannot be done remotely. They tend to be in the manufacturing, transport, agriculture, some restaurants, some forms of retail. And, other jobs require a lot of teamwork, a lot of collaboration. And I think it's pretty clear that teamwork and collaboration is done better when you're in person. You can try to make up for some of the deficiencies online, but it's not as easy. On the other hand, there are people who have jobs that involve long periods of concentration. My co-author of the book is a freelance writer. So she likes to work from home because she's spending long hours writing. People who are doing software programming, they need long periods of concentration. Maybe they need to gather at the end of the day and talk to other software people, but they don't want the interruptions of the office. So that's one factor. The second factor is just where you're located. So if you're in New York City or LA, where coming into the office involves a 90-minute commute, then you're probably not going to come in that often. But lots of companies are now clustering in small cities. We see cities like Boise, Idaho. Austin is booming. So is Sarasota, Florida, and Tampa. So we see people who are in these middle-sized cities, and it's pretty easy for them to go in the office, and they'll tend to go in more. The third thing, which we sort of touched upon, is organization. How is your firm organized? Is teamwork really important? Is coordination really important? Is brainstorming really important? Well, those are factors that suggest that you ought to spend more time in the office. But some groups are more teamwork oriented, others are not. Fourth factor, which is sort of the most amorphous, is culture. And there are a number of studies that show that Americans tend to be more individualistic. So they seem to adapt a little better to remote work where they're by themselves. Europeans, Latin Americans tend to want to have more bonding. They want to have more social relations. So they tend to like to be in the office more. And the last thing is the practical questions of scheduling. If you're all in the same geographic area, you probably want all the members of the team to come into the office on the same day, if it's 2 or 3 days a week. So that's how you can get the maximum out of your office days. On the other hand, like Autonomous, there are a number of companies that are spread out across the globe. So they have to figure out, are there overlapping time zones where everybody can be on the video at the same time? And they may decide to have regional centers where people gather in regional centers. Maybe they have one city in the US and one city in Europe, and one city in Asia, so they gather around there. So all these are factors, and people need to think hard. But I think the basic message is it's not going to be all in the office or all at home. Exactly what that mixture is going to be, I think that will vary from firm to firm, and it should vary from firm to firm. Depends on how all these factors flesh out. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Bob. And so like there are many aspects, and I think that for the companies that have like more of the professionals working in the office, they consider, a lot of them considering like a hybrid model more because of the
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Knowledge professionals are the ones who are most likely to be able to be remote.
Yeah.
So people who are actually manufacturing. So I don't know. I'd like to hear what Dewey has to say about whether his firm is moving toward a hybrid model. How are you guys thinking about
it? So it's not just us, but it's the conversation that we have every day with our customers. So the common theme that we saw and we heard from our customers so far is that yes, definitely a lot of companies are thinking about going hybrid. But the challenge that we see that a lot of people want to go hybrid, but they don't know how. Like, how do I go hybrid?
And that's the big book. They have to read my book, then they'll know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the first step. But after read the book, they gotta have the actual tool to implement hybrid work.
Yeah, right.
And that's the biggest challenge that we saw from them. From basic things like what's the plan? How do I implement it? What are the basic steps? What is step 1, step 2, and step 3? What kind of tool do I need to use from both hardware? What kind of furniture do I need? What kind of access management system I need in the building? And then to the software perspective, how do I let my employee book a hot desk, a hotel desk in an office for half a day? How do I let my team book a meeting room in a way that it's really easy and it doesn't create any conflict between two teams if they don't book the same meeting room? Like they are the really fundamental basic building blocks that don't exist yet, right? So that's something that Autonomous has been spending a lot of time in the past 12 months trying to build out these tools so that people can easily, seamlessly implement hybrid work in 2021.
I think that's great. I think that's great you're doing that. And I personally believe that if somebody's going to be in the office 2 or 3 days every week, we really ought to give that person a dedicated space. And you can rotate people if you have like 2 teams and one comes in 2 or 3 days a week and the other comes in the other 2, 3 days. So at least people have a place that they can relate to, is dedicated to them. They can keep their materials there. Because I think it's hard if people just come in and do hoteling where they just find a desk and it's a different desk every day. It's really hard. So I think that companies ought to sort of figure out if groups of people are going to really be in the office every week for 2 or 3 days, they ought to see if they can get them committed space. And then they could always have open space available for people who, if you only want to drop in the office 1 day a week, or you're not really sure what your schedule will be in. But I think it gets a little old if you have to come in the office and search for a desk every time you come in, or go on the software and sort of schedule it. It's hard. So I think, I don't know, I feel like I like to have a place that I can sort of call my own. So I think even if you're only 2 or 3 days a week in the office, I think committed space is going to be the wave of the future.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. We have a customer who we are working with them on implementing hybrid for their offices. They have about 1,000 employees, and they have multiple offices spread out the world. The problem you just mentioned about which desk should I book before I go to the office tomorrow? Yes, there are definitely people who want to have the same desk, the same setup, next to the window, the right keyboard, right mouse. This particular customer brought up a really interesting point. And this is a problem that we've been thinking about how to solve. Seat assignment optimization, right? So what does it mean to be seat assignment optimization? This is an entirely new problem that we are facing the first time. The way the old office work is that Bob has a desk, Dewey have a desk, and that's how it is, right? It's a very fixed setup. But with hot desk can introduce a new sphere problem. So if Bob come into the office today and he want to sit here, Dewey just want to come to the space, he want to sit here. But what if we can reroute? We could reroute the sitting space so that the people who likely to work together sit next to each other, right? So instead of picking a desk, they can say, I just want a desk for today, right? And then it automatically gonna sit Bob and Dewey next to each other, because in the past, Bob and Dewey like to sit next to each other, and they form the same team. So this is an entirely new problem that doesn't even exist before the pandemic, because everyone is conditioned to, I gotta go to my desk, this is my desk, right? Now we can actually solve how to increase team productivity, not just solo personal productivity, but the team productivity by automatically reassign these seats in the same area, the same cluster, so that they can work together better.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So like we talk a lot about like the space, and then we also touch upon some aspect of technology, which you also wrote about that in the book, Bob. So you might like maybe sharing some key takeaways on how to organize them to help with the hybrid work.
Well, I talked in the book about how to organize your home office, and I think that's an important thing. I think people just got thrown like into their home office, and a lot of them really didn't have a home office. They just had a desk or something. But I think the first thing is if you can have a room that's separate. And I know Dewey has some interesting ideas on that. So that's probably the best. If you can't have a room, at least you have a desk where you can sort of be a little off to the side. Then you really have to have some sort of box or something where you can storage box, because other people, when you stop using it, are going to want to use that room, and you don't want to have all your work materials being scattered around. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the technology. I think a lot of people don't have strong enough technology at home. They may not have broadband. They may not have strong enough. You may not have 3G, not to mention 4G or 5G. And they also may not have good enough computers, good enough lighting. And so if they're going to work at home, I believe that companies should subsidize the workers in terms of the technology that they need. And then a third thing I'll say is routine, structure, rhythm. So most people will do better if they have a sort of structure for their day. You know, one of the things about going to the office is you meet in the office, it's sort of, you get there, you develop a sort of routine, and it sort of structures your day forward. You arrive at 8:30, you leave at 5:30, so that provides a structure. But when you're working at home, you know, it's easy to sort of have the days blur into each other, and you really need to work hard, I think, to establish customs and routines of your own, so that, you know, I like to sort of have people where you sort of eat breakfast at the same time, and then you do exercise, and then you go to your computer, and then you take time for lunch. And so you set up a structure. It may not be 8:30 to 5:30, because that might not be the best hours for you. Maybe you work from 8:30 to 12:30, and then you spend time with your children in the afternoon, and you work at night. So whatever is best for you. And so I think that's another thing. And the last thing is a lot of people, once they started working remotely from the office, just sort of started to work 24/7. They're just working all the time. They didn't know any boundaries. And so rather than getting the benefits of working from home, where they were having less time commuting and more time with their family, they wound up burning out. So people really need to be careful when they're working remotely. They need to take lunch. They really need to take the time and do something like that. And they just need to take care of themselves better. And they don't need to think that they have to be on, all hours of the night and every weekend. I mean, those are things that are going to burn people out. Let me stop there. You do have a lot of people who are working remotely, and they're working. They may continue working remotely because if they're global. No, is that right?
I think a lot of people who have been working remotely before the pandemic, they will likely continue working remotely. I think the interesting is the group of people who work in the office before the pandemic. What will happen next? And I think that's very likely to be hybrid. I think you touched on a lot of good point about how to optimize space for personal productivity. I want to zoom out a bit and talk about how autonomous is looking at this. And again, we are very customer centric.
You had some really interesting ideas about how you can create your own home office. I think the audience would be very interested to hear about them.
Yeah, so I guess for the home office, we have a new product that we ship in next month. It's going to work part. It's a prefab home office that you can click to order on the website and get it delivered within a couple of days, and you can set it up within 3 or 4 hours, and you have your own office in the backyard. And we are very excited about that new product line.
Does it have air conditioning?
Yes, it comes with a little air conditioner.
That's important. Air conditioning, heating. You don't want to be outside in the backyard without air conditioning and heating. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. I want to zoom back out a bit and just want to mention how we think about this. So again, autonomous, we entirely driven by our customer, and from talking to our customer, we kind of see the common component, the common patterns among our customers that it isn't one size fit all, as you mentioned earlier, Bob. But and a lot of them are struggling with, how do I do it? How do I implement hybrid work? So our job in the past is to define these basic building blocks. We call the building blocks so that our customer can pick and choose. So there are 4 basic building blocks that we built that our customer can pick and choose. The first one is work from home. So for people who want to work from home, we provide solution, hardware, ergonomic chair, standing desk, so they can work from home. That's really basic. The second group of customer that group customer we serve is are people who want to go back to the office and work in the office. These are people who want to work 3 or 4 days a week in the office. And that group, we kind of served them before the pandemic already. The third group of customer is the hybrid or the flexible group of people who want to come to the office 2 or 3 times a week, want to stay at home 2 or 3 times a week. So that we had to define a new set of product line, a new kind of connected desk, a new kind of smart desk, so that people can book that desk, check in at that desk, and as soon as they check in that desk, that they will know who they are and sync up their standing high and sitting high, show a little picture of their family on the desk, so they feel at home at the desk they check in. And the fourth group that we want to serve.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The fourth group that we want to serve is are the people who work from home, but there isn't any satellite office in the area. Say if I move to Austin, Texas, and my company doesn't have an office in Austin, Texas yet, what do I do? I still want to get out. I still want to get somewhere to do some work. So the fourth group of people, we kind of call these the 4 different work mode: work from home, in the office, flexible or hybrid, and the fourth group is work anywhere. And this is really interesting because we are talking to a number of landlords and co-working spaces to provide on-demand on-demand desk booking. So for
What's
example,
that?
if
Are you
this,
going to be like WeWorks now? You're renting space and then subletting it?
no, it's not. It's similar, but it's different from WeWork. The area that we want to focus on, and to be helpful to our customer, is just the on-demand desk. So if I'm in Austin, I need a space to work today, instead of going to a Starbucks, which is sometimes not optimal for doing work. This could be a little too noisy. The furniture are not ergonomic. I'm sitting on a wooden chair and a small little table. So instead of that option, I can put the phone out. I can look for a nearby desk that is optimized for productivity, right? With an ergonomic chair, with a standing desk, with a little picture frame that show my family photo. I can book that desk for 2 hours and get work done. Later in the afternoon, if I have a meeting with Bob, we can book a meeting room that in between where you are and where I am, and we can go there.
That means you're gonna be leasing space long term and then subleasing it to your clients. So you have to be careful about how much space you're going to lease, and not too far extended on that.
Right. So right, definitely we don't want that on our balance sheet. The way that we implement it, Bob, is to form the partnerships with these landlords and space providers. So it's a revenue share model. And so far, the landlords are pretty happy when we bring the solution to them, because not only we bring in the technology, hardware, the furniture, the software for booking, we also bring in them a lot of customer. Autonomous has over between 1 and 2 million visitors per month on our site. We have more traffic than WeWork. We have more traffic than Steelcase, the biggest furniture maker in the world. So not only we bring in the technology, the solution, we also bring along the customer to them. So so far the conversation with landlord has been very, very positive.
Good, sounds good. You should also make sure to have storage space for people, so if they want back there, that they have to have a place to store their stuff, I think. So you might think about that, getting some special storage space type of furniture.
This is awesome. So like we've talked a lot about like space technology, but like let's take a step back in terms of, at the end of the day, it's all like we are all like human working together, and like we would have like a lot of still people have to collaborate, people would be like working remotely. So like one of the big challenges being people talking about is, how do you manage team remotely in a way that can actually help with like, or maintain or improve the company's culture, but also like treating people fairly regardless if they work remotely or in the office, and also kind of not creating that like isolation between the office and
I think that's a very good question, and I think that managers of teams have to be very proactive, and people are working even partly remotely. And I think that most managers aren't really trained for that. Most managers are sort of used to walking around the office and seeing how their team's doing. And so they might think of that as management by walking around. So that's not feasible when you're remote. So I think in the book, we discuss various strategies. So one is to try to have a weekly meeting of your team. Now that may seem obvious, but it depends on how you structure that meeting. Lots of team meetings are just reporting. It's like what I did last week. So I think that's really a bad use of a team meeting, because it's stuff that could be just shared through email. You don't really need to have people together. So when you have people together in a team meeting, you really want to have everybody discuss what do they intend to do? What are their plans for the coming week, and try to get input from other people. Maybe they need some coordination. Maybe they just need some suggestions. Maybe they need some contacts. So that's what I like to see as the first thing. The second is, I think the manager needs to have one-on-ones, even if they're only 20 or 30 minutes, with each direct report every week. I think when people are working remotely, they often feel isolated and sort of forced from the rest of the company, and that's not good for them. It's not good for the company. So the manager needs to meet with them and not just discuss business, but also try to see what their personal situation is. The third thing is that, and we've seen some creative stuff done where managers organize essentially social occasions for the team. So we can have games that people play. Sometimes managers actually order food that's delivered to all their team members, and they have a real lunch together, where everybody has lunch or cocktail hours or this sort of thing. So those are things in which culture can be can be reinforced. A fourth thing is performance reviews. I'm against the typical performance review, which is it happens at the end of the year. It's pretty formalistic. People exchange, views, but it's no one ever gets a bad review unless they're going to get fired, and there's real no honest discussion. So what I'd like to see is to have people have, I call it performance feedback, and to have that happen every quarter, maybe every month after every big project, and so that people will have that sort of feedback, and they'll have that understanding of what went well and what could be improved in the future. Last thing is, I'd like to see the manager lay out a set of norms, uh, a set of ground rules, you might think, for the team. So, for instance, the manager might explain, are you really expected to be on at night or the weekends? What's the expectation there? How fast are you expected to return messages? Are you if you're as autonomous as a very customer centric culture, well then maybe you want to return calls from customers at all times, but not internal messages. So people don't really know what to expect. So the manager needs to lay that out in a set of explicit guidelines. So those are 4 or 5 of the things that I think managers need to do, but they involve a lot more work for the managers. So I think that's one thing that I think we've all learned is when people are remote, managers need to be much more proactive. I don't know, Dewey, what's your view of the role of managers in your company?
So we are learning as we go too, Bob. It's not like we have everything figured out. So for the past 12 months, it's been really interesting. A couple of things that we find very helpful for us is a little. One of them is the framework called OKR. It's a framework introduced by a guy called Andy Grove from Intel.
Yeah,
I think 30 or 40 years ago.
He's a famous guy.
Yeah, and OKR is a really simple framework. The objective and the key result that you measure if you actually achieve that objective. And we use OKR extensively throughout autonomous at the top level, all the way down to each team level. And that's been really helpful for us. It doesn't matter where you are, what you do, what time you work, as long as we all align to achieve the same objective. So that's been a really helpful tool for us. I think another thing that has been helpful to us, and this is something that we did before the pandemic, because we have distributed team across 5 different countries, and even now, is to have kind of like offsite event every quarter instead of every year. So the team could be working remotely everywhere, but once in a while we can get the team together for an offsite event, maybe a couple fly in on a Thursday and work together on a Thursday and Friday together, and have a Saturday to just relax and take some bonding time through the campfire. So we find that those little activity that we begin to do more frequent. That has been really helpful because the team member has been too remote. They've been talking to each other over Zoom, Slack. They didn't really have a real bonding time over barbecue, campfire at night, set up a tent together. So those little things we find really helpful in terms of building the team bonding.
I think what you're saying is really important, because if people have spent some time together personally, in person, then it's much easier to have remote communication. It works much better. But if they never actually meet the people, or they only meet the people once every 2 or 3 years, then it's really hard. So I think the idea of having these, whether they be quarterly or whatever events where people get together and have some time not just to work together but to socialize, I think that's a really way to build company culture. The other thing that you said that I really like is these OKRs. So I use a different term, success metrics, but it has the same idea that it's basically you reach a common understanding as to what are the results that are objectively supposed to be produced at the end of the week or the month or whatever period you have. And so you're not asking people so much to work a specific number of hours or specific times. You're saying you're more interested in the results, what you're going to get accomplished. And then if you can agree on what the OKRs or success metrics, then that frees you up then you can get that done, when and wherever and how it works best for you. So I think the idea of OKRs or success metrics is really critical to having a productive organization, because you're getting off the hours work system, which really, when you think about it, it's a relic of the industrial era where there were assembly lines, and hours work probably made sense if you were in like an auto assembly line, but it doesn't make any sense for a knowledge worker, because like the people are listening to this video, do they care how many hours we put in preparing? No, they just care, is the result entertaining? Is it useful? That's the only thing they're really interested in. So I love it, this OKR notion, which we call success metrics, because it shifts people out of counting hours and focuses them on results. And then second of all, that frees up everybody to sort of have much more flexibility as to when and how and where they do it. So I think that's great.
We really appreciate it. And we also, we have sent out the link for the remote ink book from Bob, and you can check it out. And
just don't forget that you can buy it in hardback. You can get it in on your Kindle. You can get an audio version, whatever way you want it. Right? It's fun. It's short, and it even has some jokes in there.
And there's also a number of articles that Bob has written on this topic as well, so you can check them out.
Well, thank you for having me, Autonomous, and Nat was one of my best students, so I'm glad to hear that she's in a very creative company where people are being very thoughtful. So I look forward to reading about the growth and tremendous growth of Autonomous as you continue to serve your customers. So thanks very much, and I guess good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob, for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Hey,
Thank you, everyone, for sharing.